and welcome again to the Skillwork. As always, my name's Tim. I'm joined with my partner, Brett. And on this podcast, we like to engage and talk about all topics around skilled trades. And primarily, we like to engage on innovative ideas and thoughts around the skilled labor shortage in America. And we really like to engage our guests on this topic. We usually have a guest on, or we talk about things that you, as our listeners, we'd love to have you engage with us and give us some thoughts and ideas and feedback. And to that point, a couple of years ago, we did a podcast that turned out to be, one of our most, popular, most engagements. People engaged with us on it. And it was titled 4 Reasons Employers Can't Find Skilled Trades. And I think it was about 3 years ago. Well, we thought we'd take a look at that again and kind of update it and comment on those 4 things. And then we actually believe that there's a 5th issue that's come to light as well. So we're just going to kind of revisit that and see, are things still the same? Have they changed? Are things improved? Have we learned anything as an industry about how to find skilled trades? So one thing that we talked about back then was that, okay, there is a nationwide shortage of workers.
Yeah.
So that's Captain Obvious, but is there still that?
I shouldn't say the obvious, but I'd say the obvious answer is yes. I think it's evolved, a little bit since then, but the reality is it's still a big issue. Matter of fact, all the statistics, show that right now the shortage in not just specific to skilled, but in manufacturing in total, of which a portion of that is the skilled, is right now it's about 2.1 million. That industry is, and
that's just domestically?
That's just domestically.
Yeah, wow.
Yep.
Even bigger globally.
Yep. And then the projections are all that by 2033, that'd be, I think it's like 3.8. So, we talk to people, Tim, when we're out there, say that, the bad news is the problem's not getting any better. So I think the obvious answer is yes. I think it continues to be, there was a recent report in the National Association of Manufacturers that still 65% of manufacturing companies still say it's finding the skilled talent they need as their primary challenge. So that's an obvious indicator. And that, I think one of the interesting things, Tim, and, we just recently did a podcast, I don't know if it'll come out before or after this one, about training and STEM programs and these kinds of things.
Apprenticeship programs.
Yep. And so, I think one thing that's really interesting, and this is probably newer now, it was probably beginning to be known when we did this subject before a couple years ago, but, coming through the pandemic, it seems that more people, I think the study that we saw was 85% of students and 94% of parents acknowledge that skilled trade work is good quality career option. Not every kid can need to go, but that's the awareness side. The semi-good news, bad news is only 16% of those youth are following through on it. That there's still a tendency when it all comes down to it that they just still go down the traditional go to college path and then work at Starbucks.
Yeah, I mean, awareness is half the battle, and I think 3 years ago, you just didn't hear about it much, but more and more things like micro works from dirty jobs, more people, thought leaders getting out there, encouraging people to pursue trades. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're still losing about 4 to 1, retiring versus rehiring. So we're going to give you some good news, some things that have happened, some progress that's been made today. But, if you think about a ship taking on water, we're bailing water out, but we're taking on more water than we're bailing out. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's a reality. And, I think, our perspective, what we see in our, in what we do is, we're seeing more talent right now than we've probably seen in a long time. There's a high level of talent out there. I think the unique thing, I just heard an economist last week at a staffing event that I was at, and they were talking about how the wage disparity has disappeared back in, when we had what they call it, the Great Resignation.
Yeah, the Great Resignation. Yeah, people were moving around.
Moving around, and they're saying because now and a lot of that was because they could go over here and get an extra buck, or they could go over here and there was this wage disparity, and that has pretty much disappeared, which just means all the wages have kind of
Yeah, we'll
level.
talk about that. Actually, that was one of the. I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the things we talked about 3 years ago.
Yep,
We'll
yep, we'll
update
get into that in a little bit,
Yeah, so,
more,
but
more detail. His comment, on that, Tim, was that is going to slow down the people moving around as much, but that while the talent is out there, finding the talent that you need is going to become more difficult, which is kind of where we play.
Yeah, and I think we may not address it specifically here, but the skill set required, the skills and ability of particularly where we focus, the skilled trades, higher end skilled trades, just continues to elevate, which makes it even harder to find them. So reason 2 that we mentioned 3 years ago as to why it's so hard to find skilled trades is that, and sometimes the truth is hard, but the truth was companies out there that are looking for skilled trades, and we're talking mostly manufacturing, some, construction and others, they're using outdated recruiting and hiring practices. We made that assertion 3 years ago. So the question is this still an accurate statement? I would say yes, many continue to use tried and true, but I would consider underperforming approaches. But there is good news here. Companies are beginning to adjust, and we're starting to see a lot more innovation out there. And I think Ben Franklin said, necessity is a motherhood of invention. Mm-hmm. So by necessity, companies are starting to look at using new approaches, and manufacturing is slow to change. We know that. Embrace technology, but this is one of the areas where there has to be an adaptation and innovation. Here's a topic that we hear a lot that you may not have heard of, but the strategy, call it what you like, different companies call it different things, but it's this idea of a total talent ecosystem. They're looking at everything holistically, everything from how to engage and get the community involved, community involvement, how to upskill your current staff. We just had a great conversation with a company that has invested heavily and worked for several years to put in place this apprenticeship program where they take some of their folks that have a desire to move up from their production floor, train them, move them up, and now many of them have become their maintenance leaders in their company. So a holistic view, a long-term view, retention, upskilling, testing, benefits. And I would also include in that, we'll talk about it here, the use of non-traditional staffing and external partnerships with companies, like ours. So the goal is you got to build a sustainable, stable workforce that is able to persevere through the ups and downs and adjust to some of the changing dynamics. And the fact of the matter is, Gen Z is rapidly becoming, this is a current generation, 16 to 26-year-olds, roughly. They are rapidly becoming the largest workforce, approaching the millennials, and they do things differently. And we have to go to where they're going to be. So companies are moving beyond traditional hiring methods. They're partnering with external organizations. This is becoming a trend that we pay attention to. There's a study by Deloitte that came out, looked at manufacturing across a lot of different areas, and it said 94%, that's a lot, 94% of manufacturers are forming at least one external partnership to improve job attraction and retention. Most are working on, more than that, like up to 4 organizations externally to expand their talent pool. There's a lot of innovative things like investing in STEM programs, local high schools, local community colleges. We talked about apprenticeship programs, et cetera. So the common goal is you need a total workforce solution. This is becoming rapidly a strategic business investment. It's no longer, your small talent acquisition team, HR, throwing out ads locally and trying to get people to come and drop off. That is not going to get it done. So our perspective on this, to update, we believe that there is much more willingness and openness to explore what we call non-traditional partnerships, non-traditional ways of doing things, this total workforce mentality and ecosystem developing. So many are slow to adapt, honestly, and we see it every day.
We see it every day. And so you're right. I think 100% agreed, Tim, that like you said with the Ben Franklin quote, I think that, I think there was a period of time coming out of the pandemic where, okay, once the pandemic was over, there were manufacturing plants, I'm going to speak to maintenance managers specifically, who thought, well, the old way will come back now. Everybody will come back to work, everything. And the reality, we're now post that quite a ways, and that's just not a reality. There was a skilled trade shortage before the pandemic. The pandemic arguably made it worse, and then post the pandemic, we still have a skilled trade shortage that continues to grow. But I think because of that, like you said, people are more open. But we still, as a company, we're in manufacturing plants, or on the phone with manufacturing facilities, daily, and I'm still, I guess, a little bit surprised that of the stubbornness, the level of denial that some companies are still in, that we're going to have to do something more. Whether that something more is putting a 10-year plan of how you're going to upskill your own talent, or whether you're going to go out and augment and find the talent, or whatever you're going to do, you've got to have a plan, like you just called it, a total talent, strategy.
Yeah.
Is the skilled labor shortage hurting your company's bottom line? Skillwork is the premier staffing agency focusing exclusively on skilled labor. Our team of highly skilled workers augments your existing teams for elevated impact and decreased downtime. Partnering with hundreds of facilities in more than 30 states, we deploy our traveling industrial technicians to work for you on a contract basis. Our philosophy is simple: to honor God in all we do, bring respect back to the skilled trades, and positively impact those around us. For more information on how Skillwork can deliver the top labor talent you need, visit skillwork.com or call us at 402-447-7058. Call us today to see how Skillwork can work for you.
Again, we're speaking to a leader in this area earlier, and traditional is you're just swapping your skilled trades guys from facilities in your local area. They're just it's the same pool.
Yep.
You're moving around, and you'll do something like, we're going to increase the wage, so we're going to attract these guys until your competitor down the road increases their wages.
Yep.
It's a zero game. You got to figure out how to break the mold. So we need a little bit more innovation. So I would say that is still a challenge that we're seeing today.
100%. Yep. And then the third one that we talked about back then, we're going to talk about today, is the evolving skill level and expertise requirements for workers. Is that still a reality? And I think we would say strongly yes, and growing. That is one of probably all of these that we're talking about, that to us it's pretty clear from what we personally see and what we get asked to do in helping companies find the skilled talent, that the skill level that's required just continues to increase. I say it all the time to our sales team, that the question they need to be asking the facilities is do you really have a people problem or a talent problem? And the truth is, when you really stop and you think about it, they don't have a people problem. There's people out there. They got people in the production floor, but they have a talent gap. And that is the piece that continues to grow and to be a challenge. I think, a recent study, I'm not sure where this one came from, but it said 50% of manufacturers say a higher level of digital or electronic, proficiency. These demands are just continuing, to grow. Like I said, Tim, we see it, in our early days. Probably our biggest request was for industrial mechanics. And today I was talking to one of our client managers yesterday, and he made the comment. He said, right now I don't know that I have hardly any industrial mechanic jobs open, but all the automation guys that we can and gals that we can find. So that higher level of automation and whatnot, and it's going to continue, to evolve, because as we know, with AI and with smart manufacturing and all of these different things, it's making the manufacturing floor more advanced. You said it a bit ago, and a guy that spent 30 plus years in the manufacturing world, we are not very fast to advance. So we're probably the last, tend to be one of the slower industries to advance in some of that technology, depending on the industry. Obviously, if you're making semiconductor chips, it's pretty advanced, has to be. But as that's happening, and as the technology is becoming more predictive, and using AI to make your facility, AI is not going to fix the equipment, but it is going to help tell the people that are fixing it, be more predictive, be more not so much reactive, and all of that is going to take a higher level of advanced skills.
Yeah, why do you think it is that we say that, and we see it, but why is manufacturing slower to adapt to change generally, but technology, is it, in my mind, and you lived in it, is it just because you're so busy heads down every day, 24/7 producing?
I think it's a combination, and that's why you will see it. Apple, for example, Apple's going to advance faster than others, and versus, say, a food manufacturing plant that's making bacon. Part of it is 100% you are heads down. I would say two other suggestions. One, just like we talked a minute ago about slow to accept the reality of that, hey, the world has changed. I've been back here, turning this wrench, the world changed, and I'm slow to accept it. So there's that piece. The other piece that I think is real for a lot of manufacturing companies is the capital investment. The cost of equipment and whatnot. I mean, an Apple can go, we're going to spend $500 billion, because they can. If you're, Joe's, Pie Shack, and you're making pies and you just paid $2 million for this line, the idea that I'm going to go in there tomorrow and because there's a newer, faster, bigger one, it's just a little slow. Yes. Tim, not to interrupt you, but the thought came in my head, and we've had these guys, on our podcast before, the Rensinghaus, guys. And so I think part of that reason too, and we hear it all the time, one of the early reasons is as to why we started Skillwork. I've told the story when I was talking to the guy at the time that was the president of a large poultry company, and he said, we have invested millions of dollars in automation, and now we don't have the talent to run it. So I think part of that slow to adapt is they don't have the talent.
Yeah, I can see that the margins are not quite there, and those are good. But we talk about slow to adapt, and I think it's sometimes, why is that? And the reality is there's some real reasons why, but there's part of it is dynamics and slow to change and adapt, and more maybe conservative thinking about business, and others. Yeah, it's kind of all it's all interrelated, isn't it? So yeah, the fact that skill set's going to continue to go up, and these are like not shocking, but they are the same reasons 3 years ago continue to be there with a few others. So they've just been exacerbated by all the things we've talked about. So the fourth reason we talked about is really kind of goes along with this, some of the things we've talked about. But at that time, there was a real gap in wages. There was a real wage gap. They were stagnant or lagging. Skilled labor and blue collar, quote blue collar, which we don't really like that term, but people understand it, lagged in their wages and benefits. So is this still an accurate statement? That's the question. I would tell you that this is an area that has very much improved since then, but it's still an issue. I think it's always going to be an issue. Wages are always going to be an issue. But a little bit of background here from the time that we did this podcast, there was wage growth in the skilled trades, overall some significant improvement. In 2022 and beyond, if you look at it, it's kind of, there's some ups and downs. But in post-pandemic, in 2021, companies were trying to get back going. They were trying to attract people. So we had strong wage growth in early part of 2021. And then later on, 21 into 22, we saw that kind of moderate a little bit. So slowed down, wage growth slowed down. But then we saw it in 23 again, this push back up to the right, acceleration. And we're still seeing that today, and I would say we're probably entering into a little bit of moderation again, but we just had this push, and it's a supply and demand sort of thing. But overall, if you track it from, let's say, pre-pandemic to today, there are ups and downs, but the general trend has been growth in wages and benefits. People have recognized that. So that's been a benefit. We talk all the time to skilled trades guys, and we say, we believe this is a golden age of skilled trades. They're in demand. Their skills continue to be in demand. They're not going away. And I think they're getting paid to recognize that. So by January of this year, so just recently, the average hourly earnings of production, just to underscore this thought, these are for production and non-supervisory workers in manufacturing, rose to about $28.50 an hour. That's a 5% growth over the previous 12 months. That's pretty significant. And if you take all manufacturing employees, the average hourly earnings were $35, up 3.9%. So that includes everything thrown in, benefits. So that's a significant increase. And just for us, we're in this every day, all day. And I took a look at what we pay our guys. And since 2020, our average wages, not including benefits, and that's probably a quote would follow this trajectory, but we're up 28.3% in our wages from pre-2020 to today.
Yep.
That's pretty dang significant.
Yep.
And I think we expect to see higher end skilled trades guys continue to outpace other sectors.
Yep. Well, I think, two things to add on to that. One, part of that 28% increase for us and what we see in general is, one, a higher demand for higher level skills is driving a piece of that. But even like job, industrial mechanic, for example, in 2019 to today is also up significantly as well. So it's not just, the automation folks, but these guys down here are still getting paid the same. Everything has shifted, to the right, which is, it was probably needed, type of thing. It's still, and in addition, I think that, on the wage thing, even today, even though, we talked about it at the beginning there, that the wage disparity, that gap has closed, which means you're not going to be able to around, or people won't choose to around as much. But if you need a high level, talented, skilled trade, something, I need this automation person, I need we had a request yesterday, I need a multi-vac savant, kind of a thing. If you do, you're going to pay for it. And so if you need a unicorn, or not even a unicorn, just a high level skilled, companies are still willing, to pay kind of outlier prices for certain things.
We've talked, we're talking about wages here, but we've had a whole podcast talking about what besides wages and benefits, getting very creative with your workforce, especially the younger generation coming in. The things that motivated the boomer generation are not the same things that motivate this younger generation. They like learning opportunities. They like quality of life. They like, they're going to be non-traditional and accepting just what's being told to them to do. They're going to push back. So there's a different dynamic, and they respond a different way. So it behooves all of us to understand that. And the good news is that you can pursue a career in skilled trades and make a great living, great opportunity. So those four things we think are all still there. We've tried to update them, and we've got a fifth one, Brett, that we think is also, why is it so challenging to find skilled trades guys out there? And we're saying that there's an advent of companies, being honest, like ours and others, that are bringing incredible speed, technology, and specialization of how to go find these guys, because the pool is limited. We just talked about it. So you got to be a really good fit. If you and I were to go fishermen, I would catch a lot more fish than you, because I'm much more skilled at it.
From Arkansas, everybody in Arkansas fishes.
We have to survive. So, the skill and ability in fishing in the same pond. So let's talk about that a little bit. This is a new reason we think that why you may be having difficulty finding the guys out there.
Yeah, I think it's a reality of, like you said, I'm going to speak the obvious. If you do the same thing over and over, you get pretty good at it. And companies, the challenge for HR departments in these facilities, they're trying to do everything from the front office to the back office to the production floor to the skilled trade. And the truth is, we obviously live in this world. The manufacturing floor, the production floor, the light industrial, as they would call it, they need 50, where the maintenance team needs 3. So guess what gets the attention? And so and truth be told, the skill level of those 50 is different than the skill level of 3. And so to your point, companies like ourselves and other forms of things, like I said, if you do it over and over, if you want to be good at something or whatever it is, you got to be willing to commit to it and repeat to it. So I think it just creates this gap. And the reality is they're competing with us to try to find it.
Yeah, that's that's a reality, and that's the reason why, because you're competing with all of your other traditional competitors out there for a shrinking pool of candidates. We talked about that. And oh, by the way, there are people out there like us that are very fast, very agile, very focused, and very good at what we do. And we have a model that we believe, some of our core values surround really taking care and treating our guys like what they deserve to be treated. We like to treat them like rock stars. So we're oftentimes difficult to compete against on purpose. So we're not saying that to tell you that to make us your enemy. We're saying that why wouldn't you want to partner with somebody who's really good at it, that does it all day, every day? We take our fishing analogy. If I was going to go on a fishing tournament with somebody, wouldn't I rather take a professional guy with a bass boat that does it all day, every day?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
They know that intimately what they're doing. So that's what we're saying is you got to understand that it is a highly competitive marketplace out there for skilled trades, and there are people out there that are really good. So this is one of the ones that, for example, just this week, my team is looking at over 1,000 candidates that came into our system, a highly evolved system. We have a multiple gate process that we look at them. We vet all those guys to some level, and from that, we'll end up finding maybe 15 or 20 that actually make it through our pipeline. And to be able to, if you ask your HR talent acquisition team, how long would it take you to get through 1,000 applicants and give me the top 2 or 3? I mean, they couldn't. So that's just a fact. So this is a real challenge. It's just
I think if you're thinking, hey, you two guys own this company, you do this, of course you're going to tell us it works, So, but a recent, one of our sales guys put 2 pieces together here. I heard a recent study that there are roughly 27,000 staffing companies in the world. So when we talk about specializing, part of the challenge for us, we're a niche staffing company, and that's why we're really good at it. And we're not bragging, we're not being arrogant. It's just reality. This is all we do. If you asked us to find you somebody to work in IT or something else, we'd be like, we can't do that. We're not any good at it, and type of thing. But we're really good at what we do. There's 27,000 staffing companies. The challenge is the companies out there, 80% of those 27,000 are doing light industrial production, and they're not very good at what we do either. And so that company out there, though, when we walk in and we say we can help you, they're automatically skeptical because they know my HR can't help me. And the last 3 staffing companies that walked in here and told me they could help me, they haven't helped me. And so you got to pick your partner who's really focused in on that. And, we had, obviously I'd never mentioned the client's name, but we had, for an example, as, taking it from the real world, we have a client, and our client manager was there a few weeks ago and walked in, and the plant manager walked in, and I don't know the exact words, but he basically said, when you were here a couple months ago, 6 months ago, whatever it was, and you gave me your pitch and whatnot, when you left, I told my maintenance manager, this ain't gonna work. You guys do what you want, but this isn't gonna work. And he said, I don't know how you do it. I don't even really care how you do it, but you proved me wrong. And so, which is that point. And so when you do it every day and you specialize at it, you're not perfect, but you're pretty good.
Yeah. This is usually not a sales platform, but give us an opportunity to prove you wrong. Maybe. We'd love that. But we're here to help. If we can't help, we'll tell you. We get asked all the time to fill light industrial production roles, other roles. That's not us. So all we're saying more broadly, there's competition out there. There are people that are really good at it, that are skilled at it. So hopefully this update to the reasons why our employers can't find skilled labor is helpful to you. We went over the fact that industry has adjusted, continues to adjust to the changing landscape, the availability, the skills. There's a lot of challenges that still persist. Demand is still high, supply is low, but there's optimism. People are coming around. There is more innovation. There is more technology. So we do believe that things are getting better for those that are willing to learn and grow and expand, and just anything else in life. Victory goes to those who are innovative and quick and adjust to the challenges of the day. So that's really what we wanted to do today. We'll wrap it up for now, but we encourage you to engage us if you have any thoughts or ideas or pushback or have anything else that you think are reasons that you're seeing out there. We, Skillwork, we exist to connect outstanding companies like you to great skilled tradesmen all across the country. We get them to where you are, to maybe we can help you do that. So reach out to us, hit the link here, and if we can help you, we'd love to do that. And one other thing, if you enjoyed the podcast today, subscribe, tell us you like it, or tell us you don't like it, and maybe we'll try to get better. I mean, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, my dad used to say. Well, we'll do the best we can. And so until next time, God bless.
This is Brett Elliott, CEO and co-founder at Skillwork. Prior to starting Skillwork, I spent over 30 years in the food manufacturing space. From literally starting out cleaning the restrooms to becoming the maintenance manager, then the plant manager, to eventually becoming the president and owner, I've seen the manufacturing world from many perspectives. And like many of you, I've seen firsthand the growing need for higher skilled workers, while at the same time experiencing the shortage of this skilled talent. I started Skillwork to address that need. I knew the headhunter and the local temp agency models were not the solution. If you're experiencing the same shortage of talent at your facility, we would love to connect you with our team. Give us a call at 402-447-7058 or visit us online at skillwork.com.